We'll just get started. So, hi everyone, welcome to the Virtual Student Experiences Software Engineering Spotlight. If you are new to our program, Virtual Student Experiences is a pro bono initiative spearheaded for students by students. The goal of the VSC is to give students around the world an opportunity to hear from professionals in their career industry of interest in a friendly and casual setting. And for students that know what they want to do, the role of the VSC is to encourage, allow, and connect those students with professionals. Through VSC, students are given the chance to decide if their career of choice fits their personality, skills, and overall interests. And for students who are ambivalent about their future, the role of the VSC is to help them not only explore, but to discover different career paths and options. To find out more information and to sign up to be notified about other webinars, you can visit our website at www.virtualstudentexperiences.com. But before we get started, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping things, so hang on tight. Firstly, I'm going to be asking our guest professional, that I'll introduce in a second, a series of base knowledge questions so that you can get a good idea of who he is, what he does for his job. And if at any time you think of a question, feel free to post it in the Q&A module, and we'll get to that in the later part of the webinar. So without further ado, Mr. Trieu is currently occupying one of the most popular up-and-coming careers. As a software engineer, Mr. Trieu has an extensive knowledge in software, how it works, and how to make it work. He specializes in Python, Java, and JavaScript. He's very recently graduated from the University of California with his bachelor's degree in informatics. And since then, he's worked at Happy Money as a software engineer and now works at dictionary.com as a software engineer. And as a young professional in software engineering, Mr. Trieu will be able to share with us valuable information and insight into one of the future's most in-demand careers. So thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Trieu.
Thank you for having me. Thanks
First,
for the sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, just thanks for the intro. I think you definitely talked me up more than a lot more glamorous. You're making it sound a lot more glamorous than it is, but yeah.
Awesome. And just first question, can you tell us about really what a software engineer is?
Yeah, so a software engineer is good question. Software engineer is someone who solves problems. At the end of the day, they solve problems, like any engineer, except our problems are lines of code. So any you come with any engineer for problem. So like COVID, right? Let's make it more relevant right now. Doctors have data, right? There's cases coming out. There's testing all that data. Someone needs to build that data in a presentable format, right? Someone needs to build a platform to collect that data, for all that data to be pulled, and so doctors can make decisions on that data, right? A software engineer built that. You go to johnhopkins.com, you look at the maps of all the cases, what's going on. A software engineer made that. So we solve problems in the day. It spans across many different fields, from banking, finance, to entertainment, Netflix, Disney. You're gonna have a software engineer a part of that. Yeah.
Awesome. And then can you tell us more about how you got started as a software engineer and what really made you decide to follow this path?
Definitely. Yeah, just go from background. So, I growing up in an Asian American household, my dad was a software engineer. So I was exposed to it at an early age, but I wouldn't say that I was take a total liking to it. I'm sure many of you guys in high school aren't sure what you're doing. Tech is cool. A lot of people at the time were like, I want to get into gaming, let's build games. But I think now even in my, I'm not that much older than you, maybe a couple of years, but yeah, it's a lot easier to access. It's a lot, you can get your hands dirty with it. I played with it a little bit, but I didn't really touch it too much until I got to college, right? And that's where you really get into the meat of things, and you meet a lot of like-minded people, right? And so I think I would say I really got into software engineering in college, but I definitely had exposure to it beforehand because of my dad. So on, yeah.
And then while in school, can you speak to really what are some of the most important things that you learned that helped to make you a better software engineer?
Yeah, I think that's some of the things would be like being able to like anyone who's solving problems, and they be able to, yes, coding's important, learning how to code, learning how to solve problems with that code. That's important. But I think the biggest important thing, and translating that to the workspace, is being able to know when to seek help, right? A lot of the times in school, you're solving code, the problems yourself. You have an assignment, you do the homework, right? But it's the times that I would say that translate into the career is when you can't solve that problem. Who do you go to, right? Office hours, or if you're working on a team, right? How do you break up those tasks, and how do you work with other people, right? Sometimes you don't get along. Sometimes other people are better at certain things, even within the software field, right? So how do you come to ends with that, and how do you get help and work together? I think that's like the important thing to learn from school. And obviously, yes, studying, doing all your work, getting good grades, all of that, getting your work done. But it's how you work together with other people, I think, is one of the more important things.
And then software engineering seems, or in stereotype, would be more of a quant career. So how would you suggest that the students that don't necessarily have broken out of their shell yet, how would you suggest that they get to that space where they can collaborate with others?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm not blind to the stereotype that software engineers are just dudes that hang behind a computer. That is partially true, but I would say that's also false, right? I knew a lot of outgoing people that are software engineers, so I don't think that should be like shutting you off if you're like, I want to do that because I don't have to deal with people, because you're not going to do well in the field if you're not good with people, right? At some point you're gonna have to deal with another person, right? You're always going to be working with someone else, right? Unless, yeah, I don't think there's any role that you're working just by yourself, right? So how do you break out of that shell, right? I think in high school, trying to look back, it's a lot harder because, you have your different groups and such, but in college, I would say, there's a lot more people like you. Definitely it's harder right now. You're alone, you're home, but and wherever you are. But in college, I think that's the cool part. It's like breaking a shell. It's not just like parties or whatever. It's like, there's clubs, there's hackathons. That's a good point to bring up. Hackathons are really cool, right? It's a place that big companies, like, just students like you can join an organization that puts on hackathons, right? And you meet companies that sponsor these events. Companies like Google, right? Anything from Google to Netflix to, to banks, right? They'll sponsor these events. You get tons of cool free swag. I got this t-shirt right now that I wear. It's like Wix, nice t-shirt, and you meet like-minded people. And sometimes you can go there with a team, with your friends that you have some, or you can go there to meet new people, right? You win prizes, right? And it's a lot so I think college is a time where to reinvent yourself. So if you're feeling like closed off now, and you're feeling like, oh, maybe that's a good field for me because I don't have to meet people, or, it's really hard for me to deal with people. Like, college is a chance that you have tons of clubs. There's tons of like-minded people who have that same idea, right? I don't know anyone, but that's where you can break out a shell. You meet like-minded people that have same backgrounds, have similar backgrounds, but definitely shared interests, right? So yeah, hope.
And yeah, and then just looking back, since you're so young, can you speak to anything that you did in high school maybe that helped you to get an early start in your career as a software engineer?
Yeah, I'd say that doing research. Like for me, I think that what didn't draw me to software engineering, I think like the non-traditional route of it was like I liked tech, but I had that same, I might be in the boat of like I didn't see myself behind a computer the whole day, right? But computer science and software is a lot bigger field than just coding, right? It's people who enjoy tech but they don't have to code. There's designers, people who like consider like what's the best user interface, or what's the best colors, right, to attract people to produce the best result, right? If you like, why is Facebook blue? Because like he was colorblind, right? So it's like some people sometimes that's a thought that people really good designers consider, right? Accessibility, right? What attracts people to certain things. So yes, like we're talking about software engineering, but software itself is a very big field, right? So you can have, if maybe you're not that recluse, or you very are talkative, right? But there's other fields to branch from. So I'd say in high school, I I think exposure to tech, I really like tech, and enjoying it. Just being able to do your research, like, there's a lot of resources as well for you just like dip your feet in. You don't have to go full in like Java, C++, right? There's, Python and, codeacademy.com and like lots of videos online, like YouTube and stuff that you can just totally pick off of. Like, it's like kids your age or people like 60, like just learning it from scratch the whole time, So, yeah, I'd say the resources are there, you just kind of have to like just Google it. Yeah.
And then a little bit more about that. Could you speak to maybe some of the courses that someone should take in high school, or some of the extracurriculars that they should do it when they're so young like that?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, Google's your friends. So some, I know like some, it might be harder now because of the time, but I know that a lot of programs did have high school programs. So like some people I met in college were actually like, I remember like they went to a camp for Blizzard, and I was like, does that existed? Like I could have worked on that. That's awesome, But I think, I don't know what your audience is, but like it's obviously that those opportunities are not available to everyone, right? Your different circumstances, obviously. In case of my school, we weren't like, we weren't the worst school, obviously, but we in high school, like we didn't have the funding sometimes. So like I would say, if you really like computer science, like try to, push for AP Comp Sci class. It's not always realistic. Like I was trying to push for AP Comp Sci class, but that, because of the situation at school, they had to close it for a algebra remedial class, right?
Yeah.
So if you really want to pursue it, yeah, their resources are out there. Like try to search it. But if you want to dip your feet in and maybe like get some college credit, so you don't have to take the class in college, which is, APs are like the biggest time saver, because those same classes you take are a lot harder in college, right? So that's, yeah. So if you can take those classes in college and just get a little exposure, you can go for it. If not, like there are online resources for you. Yeah, and lots of tutorials and all that to get involved in different programs that a lot of these big tech companies do reach out to attract like that younger talent and get their feet dipped in.
Awesome, thanks for that. And then can you tell us about your previous job working for a software engineer for Happy Money?
Yeah, so so I worked at a startup pretty close by, like pretty close. So I started as an intern. So here's like the most important thing, right? Experience is really important. Like school, like your good grades are really important, but experience is also important. And from the outset, I would say like your first and second year, I know it's a lot, like college is a lot to take in, but think about those internships, right? Because there are a lot of jobs in tech, but there's also a lot of people looking for jobs in tech. It's just the reality of the situation, right? It does help if you have that experience. So look for those internships, and it'll really help you learn and also build those connections, because you meet people in there. And when you're younger, like a lot of people really want to help like cultivate that, right? When you join a company as an intern, like people understand that you're new. No one expects you to be like a code prodigy the day one, right? Sure, the interviews are hard. People have heard about tech interviews, but when you come in, no one expects you to just start. I mean, my first day, like I'm not like changing the whole website in one day, So yeah, I came in as an intern as a startup, and it was exciting. Like our team was small. We worked on like a mobile app, a mobile banking app. I wouldn't like the idea that when you're learning in school, like, am I ever going to use this, right? I would say that's a yes and a no, right? To be honest, that's a yes and a no. Like the concepts at a high level you do use, right? But like you're going to learn a lot of things at work that aren't taught in school, right? And it's just the nature of it. You have to be in the field to know, right? Like I said, working together, different ways, like different tools that you use, and like just how things work, right? Because the people like could be like going to school, like they went to school before you, and it could be different. That's part of it too. But the nature of the field is the tech is always changing, right? The frameworks, different type of tech, the Android and like iOS, like it's always changing. So you just have to stay on top of that. And it's like you're always learning. I think in this field, you're just always learning. You have to stay on top of your stuff, And so if that amazes you, if you constantly like to learn, this is your field. So yeah, and then I went full time. I interned like after I graduated UCI. So that helps too. So you don't have to stress too much like later on, because they prefer interns. They go to their interns first, and they might set a lower bar, right? I know sometimes like if you intern on Microsoft, my friend she didn't have to interview again. Some companies force you to interview again, but she didn't have to interview again. She got an offer full time, right? So you do well in your internship, and you don't have to stress your final year about like, oh, I need to do interviews, I need stuff, you know, you have that in your bag. So I had that. And, you know, I think a big wake up call is like, I worked full time for a couple months, like until like last December, right? And our company didn't do too well as the nature of a startup, right? We lost some funding, you know, and I got laid off, right? And that's what was like a really important moment to me. I'm not saying like I'm the most successful dude, like I'm gonna instantly get an interview at Facebook. Like, yeah, you always hear about like, but there's a lot more companies just than FANG, you know, just than Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, right? And so a lot of people, you know, going to the field, like they think that's it, right? But there's a lot more opportunities out there, and you know, just because if you don't fit that mold, don't look down on yourself. You know, the field is a lot bigger than that. So I think a lot of my time, like, you know, being unemployed, like, you know, and especially like the situation that's happening right now, it really changed things. It really changed how I thought about things, right? You know, what are you looking for your career? Like, you know, I think when you're looking for an opportunity, don't look just at the paycheck, but look at what you can learn and look how you can build up yourself, right? And I like learned that, and then, you know, it took a little time, and it obviously job searching right now is a little more difficult. But I finally found a spot. You know, I just finished my first day at dictionary.com, and you know, people seem great. It's a great opportunity. And yeah, so it seemed like it was a great fit, you know, because here's another thing, like when you're interviewing, you're seeing if you're a good fit for them, but you know, you gotta make sure they're a good fit for you, right? You know, where are you at your career? Like, are you trying to learn more? Are you trying to grow more, right? Or are you looking for something stable? You know, you gotta weigh all those in, you know, like, or where are you trying to move, you know, like the different organizations, like, you know, so you go in an interview, it's totally okay to ask like, what's the career growth, right? Or like, how can I grow as a person, right? Because they're investing, you want a company that invests in you, right? Because you're putting your time, your money in, you know, I mean, your time in, you know, you want a company that also like gives back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then can you speak to maybe what are the top 3 skills you used at your previous job at Happy Money?
Yeah. So I think this new company, Dictionary.com, is also like it's smaller as well. So, you know, Happy Money was a startup. So if, like I said, like different positions, different companies also have different cultures. You know, if you're looking at Google, Amazon, where they have like tens of thousands of employees, you know, you're you know, you're doing good work, but you're doing specialized work because it's like such a big company, right? Like startups, smaller companies, you're going to be touching a lot more hats, right? You're going to do different things, but it's going to be a little more faster pace, you know, and there's going to be less guidance. So it's a trade-off. So yeah, I would say my experience at Happy Money, I kind of learned that, and that definitely helped me in an interview. It definitely helped me in my approach to certain things that when they asked me. So yeah, I think, you know, that's one thing. Like you asked 3 things. So like one thing is just being able to be flexible and wear different hats, right? Another thing is being able to be proactive, right? Don't be afraid to, like, you know, it's a smaller company, so, you know, people are wearing a lot of different hats, so they might overlook things, you know, and you know, you can help them look ahead, right? You can think outside the box, you can think outside your role, right? So that was part of it as well. Another thing is like, I think this is also a bigger company, like certain depends on the company, but like since it's a smaller company, like you're using like a different, like the similar technologies, right? When you work at a company, you're working with certain different technologies, and other companies are going to look for those technologies when you're interviewing with them, right? So like if you work with a certain language, right, and you have experience in that, and you know, at a higher level, languages are pretty similar, but there are certain nuances and, you know, different like frameworks and packages that you have experience with. If you have experience that you can talk about, that helps you as well.
Awesome. And then can you talk us through and really walk us through what a typical day used to look like for you before the coronavirus?
Yeah, so like a typical day I had money was yeah, so software engineering just is a bottom spot, like iterating and constantly changing. The software is constantly changing. You know, like expect software to break and expect yourself to fix it. So, you know, every day, usually most software companies have this, is that you come in the office and, you know, depends how early you come, but usually in the morning is like a stand-up, which is like, you talk about where you're working for the day, right? And you talk if you're blocked or not. It's a really short meeting. You stand around and you just say what you're working on, and if it's blocked, right? It's so everyone gets on the same page, you know? So because if you're blocked, if you know there's something that you need help on, you get it addressed right away. Software is fast, right? It's not like, I don't know, other fields where, you know, things can take time, and you know, software, you got to address issues right away. No, if you're not addressing issues right away, then you're doing it wrong. Yeah, so that's a day. And then, you know, there is a general nature, like, you know, meetings generally ruin your flow, right? So generally they'll try to reduce meetings, but you know, at the end of the day, you're an engineer who's solving problems, right? So you have to discuss and talk about those problems, right? So you meet with product teams who are, you know, product is someone who's like writing the specs for what you're going to work, right? Like, so if you're going to build a website, you're like, or a banking app, it's like, okay, so this is the banking app needs. That's what a product manager will do, right? A designer will draw it up, right? Like, okay, this is what it needs to look like. And the engineer is like, okay, this is what we currently have, and this is what we can build on, right? And you work directly with them to kind of plan it out, like, oh, okay, this is going to take a 2-week thing, or how many engineers are available to work on this. You know, there's a lot of like negotiation back and forth. So you have, you know, probably one of those meetings throughout the week, and just constantly, like, you know, there might be a retrospective. So if after you finish that, you know, it's called a sprint. It's essentially like a period of time when you're working on a certain set of tasks. So you have retrospective is like, okay, what did we do wrong? What we can improve on, you know, after you finish one of those. And yeah, it's just a constant cycle, and you keep repeating that.
Awesome. And then can you speak to maybe some of the changes that you've seen happening throughout the coronavirus?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, I think if you guys have been following the headlines, I think for us, it's very lucky that as a field, we can work remotely. You know, we don't have to be in the front lines, and that's I think a lot of companies are realizing now. Like, if you follow like Twitter, I think Slack is also doing it. They're going fully remote, right? You don't have to come in the office. And you know, that definitely changes things a lot, right? Some people love that, you know, like, you know, some people in the stage careers, like, they're like, I don't want to live in like a certain area, right? Like, it's where it's really expensive. I want to live in my hometown, but I also want that, like, that job, right? So you don't. I think a better thing is, like, you're not going to be limited by where you live, right? Before, it's like, okay, I have a friend who wants to, you know, stay in a certain area, and he might be limited by the opportunities there, right? Because in an area that might be less tech jobs, whatever, right? But with this, you know, you might be, since they're fully remote, you can, you know, work for a company in San Francisco, and you know, reside in like Texas, or like, you know, even Idaho or something. Who knows, right? Another thing is, like, yeah, like onboarding, right? Like, so they actually, like, they mailed me my stuff, like my laptop and my like just earlier this week, right? So you're losing a lot of that face-to-face interaction, but you know, you still can get your work done. So things are changing. So that's what I've noticed. Yeah, so a lot more remote work, and you know, a lot more Zoom calls, Zoom meetings. So yeah.
Awesome. And then I know that there's lots and lots of different coding languages that are used for different purposes. And can you really talk to us about the main languages that you use and what you use them for?
Yeah, so in school, I like learned Python, C++, a little bit of Java. So you know, there are certain languages that are put in tools. So you know, a lot of companies use Java because it's been a language that's been out for a while, and it's pretty stable. There's like the hotter languages right now, like, you know, like a lot of like startups use like JavaScript, TypeScript. There are certain languages that are used more for like front end, back end. You know, Python is a language that it's like something easy you can pull up, but it's also like, you know, a lot of, since it's I think it's like easy, and there's like a lot of like support for it. It's like, you know, like software supports other software. So people write software for, like, you know, to work with that software. So like a lot of the machine learning data scientists, you know, they use Python. So, you know, I wouldn't say, you know, if you're in class, if you're thinking about a career, don't think about the languages yet. You know, yeah, like, you know, a lot of the main courses that are available right there are like, they'll give you the basic language like Java and something. It's important to learn the basics first until you go that, because if you don't know the basics, if you're just going straight to a language, you know, languages change all the time. Once that language goes out, then you're kind of stuck, right? So learn the basics. The main big ones are Java, Python, JavaScript right now, C++ if you're wild, but yeah. Yeah, so I would say, instead of focusing on language, I would say focus on like the higher level concepts, and then the languages are it'll be pretty easy to pick up.
And then would you have any tips as to how to really start to pick up the language and really ingrain it into your mind?
Yeah, definitely. So there's open courses on YouTube. I think Princeton has some courses. Uh, like MIT has, or Harvard has some courses out there. They're a lot more academic,
Hmm.
I would say, and that's not a bad thing. It's, if you want that higher level, if you don't mind sitting on those lectures, and if you're generally interested in it, like I take those classes sometimes. Or there are more like applicable things where they're like, oh, like the YouTube videos will they show you like, here's like a workshop, here's how you actually do this, right?
Hmm.
But I think it's important you learn those concepts. And then I would say go to the workshop, like go watch, look up the YouTube videos that just do it. And then, so I would say learn the concepts, and then think about a project you might want to do, right? And think about the components that breaks down, right? So for example, if you want to, like a stocks trading app,
Hmm.
right? So what do you need to do that? I need a front end, right? I need a back end, right? And I need a database, right? A database that stores maybe the stocks, right? What APIs will I need to create, right? To pull from it. So yeah, like the server, like where is it going to pull the, so you break down the components, and it really helps you learn once you build each component separately. And then, from each level, like you can research into the languages and choose whatever you want to build each component. Yeah.
Awesome. And then can you tell us a little bit about the typical path that a software engineer follows when really moving up in their industry?
Yeah. So this industry is pretty crazy because a lot of other industries, like you'll need a college degree, right? I have met some engineers that have a college degree and they might not be the best engineers. But I met engineers that don't have a college degree, and since the resources are out there, they're really smart. They're some of the smartest people I've ever met in the field, right? So I think that's the exciting thing. Like there's a lot of opportunity there, and you don't need a degree. So the general is like, you're engineer, you know, uh, you worked a couple years as like jet engineer, like mid-level engineer, and then senior engineer. You can, there's lead engineers if you're more experienced. So you'll like, I think generally as you go more into the senior route, you're supposed to think more like higher level.
Yeah.
How do I design the whole system? If you're a younger engineer like me, you're thinking about like, okay, how do I, make you're thinking about the smaller level, and then as you become more experienced, you're able to design based off of that. But also there's like lead, like you'll as you become more senior, sometimes they'll expect you to lead more, so like mentor like those younger engineers, or like make bigger design decisions, right? Or could make different considerations. There's also management, when you're managing other engineers, that's really important. Having a good manager is very important. I think people clown on managers a lot, but having a good one definitely separates from having a bad one. So a manager will be like, take consideration for their engineers. They try to build them up, because good engineers make a good team, right? If you're
Yep.
just having like two powerful engineers and the other ones are kind of slagging, your team is not going to function too well.
Yep.
So there's that route, and sometimes engineers like take a different route. Like maybe they will want to go to like data science, right? Or like different types of engineering, right? Or like just limited to front engineer, right? So there's so many fields. And also like if you want to switch a product, because like working in software, if you know how to build the system, I think and I've worked with like a product manager before who is like very technical. Like if you know how to build the system, you know what you can do with the system,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know what features you can do with it. You know what how to work better with the engineers. Maybe I'm not saying like someone who's not technical can't do that, but if you know the like, limitations, it does help to understand what you can do and how far you can go.
Yeah. I mean, well, thanks for answering our base knowledge questions. I'm going to go into what the students asked now. First
Mhm.
question of which is, how has being a software engineer helped your interaction with others?
Yeah, I think so. I think if when you're working on like I worked on mobile app, and now I'm working on like a website. I think my interaction with others, I'm able to you kind of like know what maybe the website wants you to do, or how things work. Like when people are pissed off, like, oh, why doesn't this work? You can be like, oh, it's because of you're doing this, or like I keep re-clicking it. It's like you're just spamming it. You're going to slow it down or something. So it helps you understand how things work, especially since our world is so more like digital now. and now especially virtual, you're helped to understand like how things work a little more. Interactions with people wise, I'd say, I don't know, like it's kind of like for me, like I guess it's kind of a loaded question, but I guess like you kind of see like if I don't know if you watch Black Mirror or something, like that's very, I would say it's taken to extreme, but like those effects are very prevalent if you look deeper into, just look around, and working as a software engineer, building the like some software, not like that, that level of software, but like you kind of see where it's going, helps you understand.
Yeah. And then second question is, how can you find internships, and what resources or platforms can students utilize to find those opportunities?
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys contact me on LinkedIn. Like, honestly, that's kind of crazy. Like, I mean, LinkedIn, I don't even know it was around when I was in high school. Maybe it was like early, but that's kind of crazy. You guys like got that all figured out. Like, for me, like, I thought it was kind of early, but what you guys are doing, that's pretty far ahead. I would say, yeah, LinkedIn. You know, even like just picking up the skills and working yourself. Like sometimes like, you can reach out to people like on LinkedIn and say like, oh, ask these same questions. I would say like, yeah, Google is your friend. It's kind of hard to say with the pandemic going on right now about like which, where to directly go. But like, I was like a lot of those bigger companies did have programs that attracted like, middle school and, high school students to get, a diversity programs, to reach them, get more involved, or like, or many nonprofits, right? There's like, I think, I saw one that was pretty cool. It's like Code USA or Code for America or something that worked with like youth, and like had fellowships for like working with code, right? I think sometimes it's not even an internship. Sometimes it's like, I worked with a mentorship in college, right? So I was like a STEM background, and it paired us with like middle schoolers and high schoolers, like building like a mobile app. It wasn't directly code, but it was like code blocks, like MIT, like Scratch, if you guys ever heard that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a way to get involved. That's like something you can bring up maybe in your college app too, right? Show that you're interested. So if sometimes the schools have that program, I know like sometimes they have them even for free, right? Through Boys and Girls Club, whatever. So I definitely get involved in that. Yeah, Google is your friend, but it's hard to promise anything with this environment. But yeah, if you search it, and it could possibly be out there.
Awesome. And this next question is reflecting a bit back into a previous question about the top three skills, and what would be your suggestion as to how do you develop or improve upon those top three skills?
Yeah. Like I said, like, I'm not the only voice on this. Like you can go on YouTube and, you can see like people talking about like the top skills of software engineering. It's hard to sift between who's like, there's definitely like the people who are like just tech influencers and people who are actually really about it. If you guys can message me after, I'll give you some links to like some people that I've talked that I like. To build those skills of like working with others, I would say, if you develop your skills to the point that you feel like you're able to commit code, the community is really cool because there's like, you guys have heard of open source, these are projects or open projects that anyone can commit to, right? Like someone, like wants to create like a project, some of the biggest software out there is open source, right? Anyone can commit to it. They're like, it's just random people working together to like build this amazing software, right? So you can contribute to that, right? And you can see how people work together. I think that's a good way as well. But yeah, just keep an open mind. And those skills, I think those skills, like, it's not limited to software engineering. When you're working in your group projects and stuff, if you're just gonna like put it on your back, yes, sometimes that's easier. But like, when you work with that project management, and like see what someone who's done this and able to split up tasks, and resolve those conflicts, that's not a software engineering skill limited to like working with other people, but it's like, that's any field skill, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that definitely is beneficial software engineering.
Awesome. And the next question, what similarities can you draw when moving from one language to another?
So yeah, moving from one language to another. So a lot of some languages are built off of each other. So like underwriting, like, Python is written in C. I think, okay, I could totally get this wrong, but like don't quote me. It's like Java is written C, C++ as well, right? So and sometimes like they're very similar structures. So like if you know C++, the syntax for Java is very similar as well. So what kind of skills that link them together? I think like taking those initial languages like Java or like those basic intro classes like Java or like Python, like you'll see it like the basic concepts like loops. I might be going over head like just listening to this, right? But in the class they'll talk about those concepts, and those classes try to not like they have a certain language, but they won't limit the specific like language semantics. They'll try to they're addressing, since it's a basic class, they're addressing those main concepts like data structures and different like things that are prevalent across every language. Like every language will have like a certain current like a similarity with them. And once you like get into it in those classes, they'll explain it.
Awesome. And then last question, as a software engineer, how do you stay safe while online? And what are your views on the dangers of the internet?
Safe while online. I'm not like totally sure like the total like I think just keeping like a general sanity. Like I don't know, like we all group like don't click random links.
Yeah.
Ad blocker. I don't like general like I think especially today I think you're seeing it more prevalent like with like the backlash against Google and Facebook, right? Like these companies, it's hard to beat around the bush, but these companies are for profit. If they're free, you got to see like why are they free, right? There's ads, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do they make more money? Get you to keep clicking or stay on that platform, right? Like Facebook, you keep scrolling, it never seems to end. So how do you stay safe is how do you like consider like how do you see those patterns? I think we were talking about earlier about how like how does it help you deal with people? Well, I think also how does software like building software help you deal with yourself, right? How do you see when you're kind of like in those loops, right? In those like patterns, like yeah. So there's this concept called dark pattern where it's like in design where they design you to like users to go a certain route, which is bad, right? Like like those spams where it's like an X mark, but it opens another pop-up. Like that's a dark pattern, right? But like at a higher level, they're like a lot of the software companies, like these social media companies, these are kind of dark patterns, right? Like you've seen before, like a lot of controversy around YouTube of when like you click one link about like talking about like how debunking a myth, and it starts sending you videos about the myth itself, trying to validate it, right? So these algorithms are out there. These algorithms are built by people, so they're not perfect, right? And they're also, the main purpose of these algorithms is to keep you engaged, right? Because that means more ads, more chances you might click on ads, right? That's how they make money. So as a software engineer, like sometimes unfortunately you're building these things, they're not always for evil. People still have to put food on the table, but it's just recognizing the patterns and the behaviors that are into it and be able to like sort out of it. I think that's like how you healthily engage with it, right? Recognizing those things are there, right? And just don't totally sucked in, right? Like even though I'm a software engineer, like you try to limit, you don't always be stuck to your screen, or if you feel like you're being validated too much, maybe if you feel like you're stuck on something, then maybe it's not. But I'm not high on the mountain either. Like I Netflix binge, stuff's awesome, but yeah, it is.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, that's all the questions we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Virtual Student Experiences, and we appreciate your new and young perspective that you're able to provide us with. And I mean, for students, if you'd like to learn more about VSE or join another webinar, you can visit our website at www.virtualstudentexperiences.com. And thank you so much, and have a nice rest of your day.
Thanks. Yeah.